Abbott announced more than 1 million voters have been removed from the voter rolls since he signed voter reform legislation in 2021. The governor's office says 457,000 of those people were deceased, while another 134,000 had moved out of the state, and more than 6,500 weren't citizens. 65,000 simply didn't respond to mail, which the American Civil Liberties Union of Texas says can happen for any number of legitimate reasons.
In a way, several messages the last few weeks asking me to talk about the Texas effort to purge and suspend voters. I've been talking about this on my page for weeks. I've been encouraging all of y'all to make sure that you have a monthly habit of checking your voter status on votetexas.org. I'm gonna do it probably twice a month, but you do you at least once a month, because they're bragging about purging voters from the list. They're talking about they've purged non-citizens. People are saying, no, those are recently naturalized citizens. And I'm inclined to believe that, because if I'm here trying to lay low, why would I go sign up to be on a Texas official state document? That don't make sense. They are also purging people they believe have died, or people that have moved out of state. And they get it wrong all the time. So you need to go check and see if you've been purged or suspended. If you've been suspended, please hear me. You can still vote. You can still vote. But you can also update your address using instructions on the Secretary of State's website, but you can absolutely still vote. If you've been purged, you got to sign up again. My mother just texted me actually saying to make sure I check my voter status on votetexas.org, and knowing her, she got that from a church group chat. So I'm telling you that because you all have megaphones and influence as well. Be telling your friends in your group chats, in your group me's, your own social media friends on Threads, TikTok, Twitter, if you're still over there, Instagram, Facebook. All these places are excellent places to share information. I know people think that my megaphone is huge, but you all have such influence as well. Please be sharing with your friends about what is happening.
Well, as Texas undergoes sweeping changes to its voter registration rolls, with over 1 million people removed since the last presidential election, questions have come up about the implications for voter access and the integrity of the state's democratic process. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has defended these actions as necessary to prevent illegal voting, but critics argue that the measures disproportionately affect marginalized communities. Today, we speak with Texas Democratic Rep. Ron Reynolds to gain insight into the impact of these voter roll purges and the broader voting restrictions that accompany them. How you doing, Ron?
Hey, Stacy, I'm blessed. It's good to see you, brother.
It's always good to have you on Let It Be Known. We appreciate you. Listen, so the impact, let's talk first the impact on marginalized communities. Obviously, let's face it, that is the goal. Governor Abbott claims that the removal of over 1 million voters from Texas's rolls is to protect the right to vote and to crack down on illegal voting. However, given that these measures are widely criticized for disproportionately targeting communities of color and voters with disabilities, how do you believe this will affect the electoral power of these marginalized groups?
Well, Stacy, I'm going to be very succinct and very candid and transparent with you. I believe this is by design. Texas, Maya Angelou said it this way: when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. We've seen the state of Texas officials, including Governor Abbott, election after election, do things that they can to make it more difficult for people to vote. And that disproportionately impacts African Americans, Hispanics, and the poor and the disabled. This is all by design. Those are Democrats. Those are people that usually vote Democrat. And so they're doing everything they can to put their thumb on the scale to impact this critical election. This is not by mistake. This is by design. This is part of the MAGA movement. This is part of the bigger picture of Project 2025. And Governor Abbott is doing this because he has the power to do so. But this is unpatriotic. This goes against everything that America stands for when we talk about protecting our fundamental right to vote. In the state of Texas, we've seen time and time again that they make it more difficult to vote. Jim Crow 2.0. So this, Stacy, is going to have an impact. Let me tell you why. I had a constituent that I know personally that was purged. She was outraged. She called me almost in tears, kind of hysterical, because she knew this is a former precinct chair. She knew that if it happened to her, she knew that she's alert, and she checked her status, only to find out that she was purged. How many people, Stacey, are going to check their status when they're just trying to pay their bills, when they're just trying to keep their lights on, when they're trying to put their kids through school and work their job or two jobs. They're not going to check their registration. They're going to the polls, assuming that they're registered, only to find out that they're purged. So yeah, this is a problem. I'm asking for the Justice Department to intervene. We need some action because there's so many people that are going to be disproportionately disenfranchised that look like you and I.
Yeah, and listen, you can't expect any relief from the Supreme Court, right?
No, no, sadly we can't, man. This is frightening. This is why we need federal legislation, the John Lewis Voting Rights Advancement Act and the Freedom to Vote Act. This is precisely why we broke quorum. We left Texas to go to DC because of this law that's going to disproportionately impact people of color that they passed. We broke quorum, went to DC, pleading for our Congress to pass it. The House did it, and of course, long story short, the Senate, because of the filibuster and Senator Manchin and Sinema, they didn't pass it. So now the states have the authority because the Supreme Court has gutted certain sections of the Voting Rights Act that gave us those protections in Section 5. So unless the Congress reauthorizes and strengthens the Voting Rights Act, we're going to see more states do what Governor Abbott did, and it's frightening. But this is the way that the Republicans are doing it to win by any means necessary, and they're doing it under the Trump playbook. If you can't win by appealing to voters and getting the most votes, then what do? You holler voter suppression. You come up with nonsense like Governor Abbott did, purging over 1 million voters from the voter roll. So yeah, we're, as chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, we're speaking out. We're not going to be silent about this, and I appreciate you all letting us come on and talk about this because people need to understand. I'm happy that influencer used her platform because people need to understand what's happening, and until there's a cure, they need to check their voter registration status. And now Texas, unlike other states, you have to be registered 60 days before the election in order to be eligible to vote. We don't have online voter registration. We don't have same day registration. So if you're not registered 60 days, so example, if you find out too late that you were purged and then you go register, hey man, sorry,
Done.
you can't vote in this election. So that's why it's so important that people check their status now.
And then this so-called risk of the suspense list, with nearly 500,000 voters purged after being placed on Texas's suspense list, there's growing concern that legitimate voters are being disenfranchised. What specific reforms are you advocating? You did say the John Lewis Voting Rights Act,
and the Freedom to Vote Act, right?
The Freedom to Vote Act, but this suspense list. I mean, listen, how many? Let's be real here. How many people who are not eligible to vote? How often do you see that?
That's very minuscule. I mean, this is a red herring. This is the propaganda from the MAGA movement about voter fraud and voter suppression. I mean, that's what it is. We see more voter suppression than we see voter fraud. So this is a ruse to put draconian voter suppression measures in place to disproportionately impact communities of color. That is a fact. And I'll tell you, I'll give you some evidence, Stacey. I served on the elections committee before. I'm not on there anymore. I guess I caused too much good trouble. But after President Obama won in 2008, in 2010, the next legislative session, guess what the legislature did? We put in the strictest voter ID law in the country where students couldn't use a student ID, where if you had an expired driver's license that was expired more than 60 days, you couldn't use it. They knew that disproportionately impacted young people and people of color. Now, had the Voting Rights Act not been gutted by the Supreme Court, Texas would have had to get pre-clearance before they did that, which Texas has a history of discrimination against African Americans and communities of color. So we saw a reaction when Obama won and young people came, college students using voter IDs. they said, no more of that. But guess what they did allow, Stacey? They allowed people with a concealed handgun license, they could use that to vote, or a passport, but they could not use a valid student college ID. So I'm telling you right now, loud and clear, that these folks in the Texas legislature, led by Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Patrick, they are MAGA extremists that will do and win by any means necessary. And that means that if they need to implement and roll out voter suppression to keep Black and brown communities from voting, they'll do it. Because guess what? There are more African Americans in Texas than any other state. Hispanics second only to California. And there's a growing majority minority with Asians, African Americans, and Hispanics. And they're afraid. They're afraid of the grip of power that they have, that they're going to lose if these minorities vote. They're going to likely vote Democrat. So that's what it's all about. It's holding on to power and putting their thumb on the scale to keep communities of color, making it more difficult to vote, all while making it easier to get a gun, by the way.
Yeah. Well, here's another thing too. They claim to have removed approximately 6,500 non-citizens from voting rolls and referred about 2,000 cases for potential felony charges. It seems like there's a significant overreach here. Were there really 6,500 non-citizens on the voter rolls?
No, I don't believe that. I love to see that documentation. We've seen time and time again. How many times have we seen Trump lie about voter fraud? I mean, come on. I mean, I want to see empirical evidence. I think this is our attorney general is a compulsive liar, Ken Paxton. He's lied, and he's the one that has went to Trump aid. Recently, you may have seen it. He raided the house of the president of LULAC.
Yes.
And this guy is because they endorsed Kamala Harris. And so this is, I mean, this guy is the one who ran not from Texas, but as the Texas AG to file a lawsuit in another state alleging voter fraud to protect Trump. Now, all that stuff was thrown out. The Supreme Court, even Trump's conservative justices said there's no evidence of voter fraud. Georgia, nowhere else. In fact, we know, that Trump committed voter fraud and voter intimidation, and he's been held account for that. But the point is, there was no evidence of any malfeasance in terms of voter fraud. So this is all just a red herring to pass these draconian laws that disproportionately impact African Americans and Hispanics and disabled and the poor. And we've seen it time and time and time again. And unless we speak truth to power and we fight, they're going to continue to pass these measures, voter purges, making it more difficult to vote, and doing everything they can to take us back to the days where we were not able to, Jim Crow 2.0. So yeah, they don't use poll taxes and literacy tests anymore, and how many bubbles in a bar. So they're more creative with their voter suppression now.
And we've seen this in not just Texas, but are you expecting this to be something that we will see across the nation, particularly in Republican-led states?
Absolutely. This is another playbook from the Heritage Foundation that came up with Project 2025. These conservative think tanks, they do this, and they'll float it out with Texas or Florida, and then once they do it, other red states that are led by very MAGA extremists, they do the same thing. And in Texas and some of these other states, they're controlled by the Republicans control the House, the Senate, and the governors, and they can do these type of things. So it's frightening, and that is why the only way to stop it is through federal legislation. And that is why we're so leaning on this election to get Kamala Harris elected as president, a leader, a speaker, Hakeem Jeffries, and a Democrat majority in the Senate, so that we can pass this federal legislation, because it is frightening the way that they want to take us back. Our ancestors and our forefathers whose shoulders we stand on today, they fought, they died for these precious fundamental rights to vote, these freedoms to vote. And now they're chipping away at them right now, and we see it right before our very eyes. And if we're not careful, they're going to implement more and more extreme measures to make it more difficult to vote. Which
And
that
it's and to-
that that
I'm
that that that,
sorry.
that is the bedrock of our democracy.
Mhm. And you mentioned, of course, the John Lewis Voting Rights and the Freedom to Vote Act, and you mentioned um, electing Kamala Harris, as remedies to this. But aside from that, what can be done? I mean, because Abbott is in control, and down in Florida you have that guy DeSantis in control. What
Yeah.
can be done
Well,
realistically? Well, let me not say realistically, but what can be done aside from those other remedies that you mentioned?
Well, the only other things that can be done, quite frankly, Stacy, is a difficult path, and that is through litigation. That is through filing lawsuits, and the challenge with that is we've seen, as you mentioned, alluded to earlier, a Supreme Court that is recalcitrant on following the law. We've seen them bend over backwards to rule in favor of former President Trump, and like gutting Roe versus Wade, what we thought was precedent that would never be overturned. So we're seeing a Supreme Court that is just very, very MAGA extreme, and I believe that yes, we can bring these lawsuits as we should, but the likelihood of prevailing through the courts is slim to none. That
Right.
is the concern. So the only other alternative we have outside of legislation is litigation, and litigation leads all the way up. They appeal it. You may win at the district level, you may win at the appellate level, but lo and behold, once it arrives on the steps of the U.S. Supreme Court, hey man, you've seen time and time
That's
again
it.
what they are capable of doing. So that's the even when I talk to, for example, I'm on the national board of the NAACP. We're going to continue to fight, but we know what the Supreme Court does when these cases land on their doorsteps. And so, yeah, I mean, it's very concerning when you know that the deck is stacked against you with a 6-3 conservative majority, six
Yeah.
three, and that is why it's so important about the who's at president, because these are lifetime appointments. And when Obama got cheated out of his appointment of Merrick Garland, it's been downhill ever since. When Ruth Bader Ginsburg didn't leave, uh, and then she died under Trump's watch, and then he got a chance to appoint another person. So it's man, the stakes couldn't be higher. But litigation is a remedy, but we know what that remedy looks like when it's played out. Even through well crafted arguments and precedent, this court seems to turn a blind eye.
Yeah, and as Greer mentioned, President Biden had talked about expanding the court.
Yes.
Is that even possible now?
It's possible, but it's unrealistic because it would take 2/3 vote in the Senate, and we know that that's not going to happen. I mean, we need Supreme Court reform. We've seen Justice Clarence Thomas and how he's bought and paid for. I would love to see Supreme Court reform. I would love to see us stack the Supreme Court under a Biden administration or a Harris administration, but the likelihood of that, honestly, is very unlikely. It sounds good. I'm glad that he used it as a talking point to get us talking about what it could look like. But the reality of it is, the Republicans would never go along with it. They won't even do Supreme Court reform right now, where you put parameters in there on disclosures, so that every other judge, they have to disclose all this stuff. There's ethics reform. The Supreme Court is basically untouchable.
So
And
really, what you need is a president who's willing a president who's willing to expand the court, and then you need a super majority in both houses, right?
exactly, that's exactly what you need. You gotta have it. You gotta have it. And then when you have it, you have to use it. And that was one of the criticisms that I had of President Obama. When he had the ability and he had that majority, he didn't use it. I mean, I love Obama, but with when you have the power, you have to be able to use it. The Republicans, one thing I've learned, Stacey, is that when they have the power, they damn sure use it. They will run it down your throat. Democrats, we try to play nice and try to play footsies and well, let's
We say
just
that all the
see.
time about you
Yeah,
guys.
yeah. We need to get tougher, especially when the stakes are this high, man. And that's what we got to do. And I'm hoping that Kamala Harris seems like she's no nonsense. When I was there at the convention, her speech, she took it to former President Trump, and I hope that she will lead that way with conviction. And as a former prosecutor, this is a great asset that she will be able to have. So I'm praying that she will be successful. But not only that, that we'll have the numbers in the House and the Senate. That's gonna be a tall order. That's why this election is so crucial um,
Yeah.
to keep those majorities. It's unlikely that there'll be a super majority. That's unlikely.
Right.
But we need anything can happen. For example, in Texas, Colin Norwood is trailing 2 points behind Ted Cruz in the most recent poll. That means that Texas is a battleground state. We're in play.
Mhm.
And with these overreach of Governor Abbott on voting suppression, on this anti-DEI measures that they've implemented, I'm hoping that minorities are going to come out and vote in record numbers. That's the only way that we're going to be able to pass these laws to fight these these setbacks that we've had over the last several years. So I'm fired up, man. I'm looking forward to
He's fired
fighting.
up.
I'm fired up, man.
Well, Ron, though the election, of course, we keep talking about.
Mhm.
Everyone keeps talking about the how consequential it is, perhaps the most consequential. It's going to be contentious. So,
Yes.
how do your side win?
We win, it's the old cliche. When we fight, we win. So we have to fight for every vote. We have to knock on every door of a registered voter. Low propensity voters, we need to go and wake them up. These are voters who haven't voted maybe since Obama was on the ballot, right? But we need to go and get them. We need to go in the hood. We need to go in the barber shops and the beauty shops. We need to go to the football games, and we need to be in the grocery store registering people. These people aren't going to political functions. They weren't at the DNC, but they're registered voters, and we need to go appeal to them. And black men is a crucial electorate. We black women have been very high voting. They've helped save democracy over and over again. But we need our brothers to step up to the plate, to come home and vote their values, and not this nonsense of Trumpism. I've seen some nonsense where he gave us a stimulus check, where he pardoned, Pookie, or he got some cool red sneakers. That's nonsense, man. Don't give me that BS. Uh, so yeah, we need brothers to do the right thing, to vote, just like our sisters do, and we need them to vote their values. If you stand for, if you want to, have any measure of voting rights, if you want to have Medicaid expansion, just go look at Project 2025. If you want to see us go back, then go vote Republican, go vote for Trump. But if you want to move forward, where you have affirmative action, where you have access to quality, affordable health care, meaningful criminal justice reform, a woman's right to choose, then you better go vote Democrat. Raising the minimum wage, climate change, all that stuff is on the ballot.
Ron, and real quick, I'm going to throw some numbers out to you and tell me how encouraging this might be
Okay.
or not. So there's been an increase in voter registration, um, and particularly since the convention. Young women, 83.7% increase in voter registration among young women. Among Black Americans, there's been an 85.8% reportedly uh, increase in voter registration. Among Black women, there's been a 98.4% increase in voter registration. And young Latinas, 149.7% increase. And then young Black women, and increase of 175.8%. And this is according to Target Smart. What does that mean,
Wow.
Ron?
Wow. Man, I hadn't seen these numbers. First of all, this is I'm a little blown away. This is that is
What does that signal to
just
you?
I've never seen these kind of number. I've seen charts before with statistics. I'm impressed. I'm blown away. I'm overjoyed. This means that there's so much momentum. This kind of surge, uh, to me, it spells victory. I mean, wow. This is I'm impressed, man. That's a lot of voter enthusiasm. That's a lot of voter enthusiasm to have those kind of numbers.
Yeah, I just saw that. And Greer just grabbed it too. It's like, wow. And
Wow. Yeah. I
but
mean
then
that
on the
that
other side, there are reports. NPR just last week did a um, a story that young black voters are becoming more conservative than they used to be. Um, what is I mean, so how do you reconcile that as well?
well, Stacy, I don't believe it's. I mean, honestly, I'm a proud brother, but I don't believe it's. I don't believe it's the women. I believe it's the men. I've seen statistics to show that black men, particularly younger black men, have been trending towards Trump and towards conservatism. That I think is a lot of misinformation. A lot of There's a disconnect, and that's why it's so important that we uh, uh, reach out to these brothers so that they are well informed about the policies that Project 2025 entails. I can't tell you many brothers that would go along with Project 2025. And so that's why it's so important that we have these conversations and we have trusted messengers that are delivering this message, and not necessarily politicians, but other community leaders and activists. They need to be engaging these young voters so that they can come back home. So yeah, it is a concern. It's real.
Yeah.
Disproportionately, these young brothers it was more under Biden, and a lot of it was because of the lack of a ceasefire, and Biden's policies on the Palestinians, and they were sympathetic to the Muslim and Palestinian plight. I get that. I call for a ceasefire, but it was much. It was either even when they felt like he didn't do enough on criminal justice reform, or this or that. So yeah, a lot of it is conversation that needs to happen to understand what in this case, the Harris administration stands for, and the commitments that she would make, and the progress that has been made. I think that needs to be spelled out very clearly so that they can make an informed, intelligent decision. Don't just assume that some nice commercial or some mailer is going to persuade them. You need to go talk to them. You need to engage them. You need to earn their vote. And I'm doing that. I'm on the front line, and I'm challenging other brothers to do it through fraternities, through the 100 Black Men, through just you don't have to have a title or organization. Just each one reach one. Talk to your neighbor. Talk to your family members. Talk to your coworkers. You're in a social. Use your social media. I think everyone has a responsibility to be engaged, but that is a real concern, Stacy.
Well, and here two NPR reports that approximately 40 million members of Generation Z will be eligible to vote this year in November, and of that 40 million, almost half are young people of color, including about 6 million Black youth.
Wow. Yeah. And
So
Stacy,
some outreach needs to be done. And
it
and
has to be
and Ron,
done.
listen, we say all the time about messaging, right?
Right.
But where you do your messaging, right? Are these Black youth? Are these youth of color? These 40 million? Are they watching CNN? Are they
No.
watching MSNBC?
No.
Fox? Who are they getting their news from? Who are they
Yeah,
getting their information from?
yeah, and a lot of it is
Eh,
TikTok. A lot of
mhm.
it is Instagram. Not, I mean, they tell me they don't look at Facebook no more. So a little bit of X, Twitter, but Stacey, that's why it's so important that we use the resources, especially, in the Black media. I've been one to say, hey, we need to make sure the resources are given to trusted messengers, our Black press, to cover these issues, to make sure that this is getting to the right communities, right? The neighborhood newspaper. We need to do a better job of supporting the Black press and Black radio. We're not doing that. I've called out. I've been in rooms where we have called them out. Clyde Cummins, who now is the head of CWA, and a few other ones. We've said, hey, where's the spend on Black dollars? If we have a seat at the table, we need to be opening our mouth advocating for that, and that paradigm has to change. You just can't take our vote for granted and expect that we're just going to automatically vote Democrat because we're Black. You need to court these young people, and they need to come back home, and we need to spend the money to do that. So I'm hoping that message is starting to penetrate. But I've been in rooms where I've had that discussion, and I'm going to continue to speak truth to power, to talk about putting more resources in the Black community so that we don't have this problem, because we are the base of the Democratic Party. So goes African Americans. I mean, so goes the Democratic Party. If we sit home, Kamala Harris loses. Period.
Yeah, and a couple of quick more things. Ron, talking to Congressman Ron Reynolds out of Texas. What's the energy? What was the energy like, and what is it now among your colleagues after the losses by Representatives Bowman and Bush? And where
They,
do progressives sit in the party right now?
progressives took a hit. They did. They took a hit, and that was largely funded by APAC, who basically funds pro-Jewish, you know, candidates, and they targeted them with a record amount of spending. I mean, they threw everything at them, and so it was chilling, and it was used to stifle the voices of opposition to Benjamin Netanyahu, and those who spoke loudly about a ceasefire, and about the atrocities, the genocide, and the the escalation of the war from Israel, and the tens of thousands of innocent babies and women that have been murdered in Gaza and Palestinians. So yes, this was a setback, no question about it. In fact, I talked to a congressman. I'm not going to mention his name, but he said, "Man, I mean, the talk is, hey, you better be careful, or else you'll be next." So
Right.
yeah, they accomplished what they wanted to, but I think that those who have the conviction, they still need to continue to speak truth to power and not worry about the polling or the temperature or APAC, because guess what? Summer Lee, they targeted her, and she won.
Hmm.
Ayanna Presley, and uh, there's another one. I'm her Ilhan Umar. They went
Yes.
after her too, and she just won. So don't let that stop you from speaking truth to power. You have to have conviction, and you can't be timid in this business. So it was definitely very concerning, and it was a setback because you know those were two very progressive members, that, and if you saw Cori Bush's speech, man, after her concession speech, she was really, I mean, she was on fire, man. She
She
fired
ain't
back
going
at
nowhere.
them. She said, "I ain't going nowhere," and she was unleashed. And I helped her with a fundraiser when she came to Houston, because I thought, she was a courageous member. And so yeah, that's troubling. It really is troubling, and I was very disappointed that both of them lost. But when you look at the massive amount of money that was spent against them, I mean, my goodness, APAC really wanted them gone.
Wow. And speaking of them, let me throw this one in too. What's the future for them? Is there a future within the party somewhere for them, with maybe within uh, a potential Harris Walz administration or somewhere?
I would like to see that, but that would be up to a future president, Kamala Harris. I'm already speaking it into existence, and something that they would have to decide. But personally, I think there's a seat at the table for them, and I hope that they will be utilized. They're both very young and talented. And I hope that they will find a future vehicle to continue to advocate, and hopefully that could be in a Harris administration or some other place. But I think there is a role for them, and I think they have a future somewhere to continue to advocate and be a voice, because they both are very courageous. And you like to see that type of leadership, a bold, unapologetic leadership. So I'm hoping, I love to see them in a Harris administration. But if they're not, I think that they'll be somewhere where they can continue to advocate and be a trusted messenger.
Yeah. Congressman Ron Reynolds out of Texas. We appreciate you, Missouri City. We
Yes,
appreciate
sir.
you
Yes.
for joining. Let it be known. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you again.
Thank you, Stacey.
No one expected 2016. That election season sits on a lot of our minds. I think a lot of us are still, emotionally attached to what happened then, because it unleashed such a dark era for the country that I think no one anticipated. But I think we've found our footing. I think it started in 2020 when, we were able to organize and get together and push back against what we saw fascism coming at us directly. We got together and we made it happen. So we have a blueprint now. And now that you have a blueprint, you can build on that blueprint. You can adjust, you can make tweaks, you can sharpen the edges. It really gave us an opportunity to sharpen our skills and position us better to win. We're now at a space where we've seen darkness, we've looked it in the eye, and we know how to win. And we're ready to do it again. 44,000 Black women hopped on a call, and we of course pioneered and sparked a movement that just it continues. There are calls that are happening, as we speak.
Black
so
men, white
yes,
dudes for
yes,
Harris.
yes, all manner of folks.
Yeah.
Cat ladies, I'm a childless dog mom here. There's a space for it, and it reflects a broader message, right? That no matter who you are, what you look like, who you love, there's a place for you here.